episode of our Contagious Leadership series, formerly known as Lunch Talk. And we are now starting to move more into the contagious leadership aspect. Lori Ann, welcome back.
Thank you. It's been a great week. How's your week been?
Good. Other than the allergies that I was just crying about before we got started. I don't know if you can notice, but there's a little secret bunker we've been working on here. So anyways, more to come really later in our new studio, at least my new studio. But we have a great guest coming up. I'm really excited for you guys to meet her. She's definitely going to leave an impression. And just get ready for this. We're going to be back in the next few seconds with Rahti Gorfien. And I hope I said it right with the right energy, but we're about to get into how we get out of our own way. Lorianne, I know you're pumped about this one.
I am so excited for this conversation and to learn from this woman. Oh, and everybody's going to get so much value out of this particular. Yeah, let's just get started.
Yeah, let's get going. Donnie, go ahead and roll us out, and we'll be back in 30 seconds. Talk to you guys soon. There we go. I love it.
The audience is so excited.
I am. I was thinking back to my days as a punk drummer, and I was in a band called Tim Milk and the Novembers, and my punk rock name was Claude Chocolate, and I was the drummer.
Claude Chocolate. Okay.
Yeah, they were the days.
So I love it. So Rahti, I love the name, and I'm like so wanting to not mess it up, especially with a name like Rigoberto. I want to respect that, but it's crazy because just the name itself has energy in it. And we had a pre-call here a few days back, and that turned out to be a really fun call. So even Donnie and I were discussing it, and I know you and Lori Ann had not had a chance to meet prior to the show. So I want to give you an opportunity to tell everybody and Lori Ann at the same time, but why do you do what you do? Give us a little bit of background on who you are and how you kind of came to this point. I'm excited that we connected, but I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you and tell us your story.
Wide open. I love it. Wide open question. Well, first of all, I'm curious about my name, Rahti. Rahti is a Sanskrit name. Rahti was the consort of Cupid, who's the Indian version of Cupid called Kama. Rahti is the goddess of carnal love. Oh, it also means desire. That's actually why I think it's a great name for a coach. It means desire. What do you want? It also means intense attachment to the Lord, which is kind of, I guess that's the same now that I think about it. It means other things. So you might have been curious. Anyway, I was an actress for 30 years. And that was great, except that I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I didn't like myself very much. And it was great to be somebody else. Also, I actually was on a stage with Meryl Streep way back when as the company apprentice for the Yale Summer Cabaret Theater, and I played the corpse. I was very proud. I was 16 playing a corpse under a couch, and Tom Stoppard's the real Inspector Hound, and Meryl was stepping over me back and forth in a gold lame gown. I was such a great corpse. You couldn't see me breathing. I had these big army boots on, And afterwards, I ran over to my dad, and I wanted him, because he saw a show. I asked him, "So, Dad, what do you think?" And I wanted him to tell me what a great corpse I was. Anyway, he said, "That big blonde," meaning Meryl Streep, "is going to make it." Now, that's not what I needed to hear. right? And of course, what we do is we hear things as children and then we make them mean shit that they don't mean. So I made that mean. If I'm going to be a successful actress, it has to be on a par with Meryl Streep. Anything less is nothing. So that bar was kind of high. And fast forward, my heart was broken, and I hied me to a nunnery. I moved into an ashram. That's basically a Hindu kibbutz, a nice place for a Jewish girl to go since I couldn't become a nun. And I needed to be there, first of all, because I probably would have caught AIDS and died if I hadn't, because I was a slutty little thing. But also because I had no sense of my own identity aside from being an actress and what I considered a failed one at that. So living there was great. I learned the most important lesson, I think, of my life, which is that company is stronger than will. You don't do anything alone. I also realized that I am innately lovable, regardless of what I do or who I am. Spiritual grounding is what I was lacking and I got. And then eventually I was, I don't know, I don't want to get sued, but the ashram is doesn't exist anymore. And I like to say I'm one of the few people to get kicked out of a cult. Anyway, my vision did not stay aligned to the guru's vision. Let's just say that. And they asked me to take a leave of absence for a while, which I did. And I'm glad. I went back to New York and all of a sudden I had tools. I started creating support systems around myself. I started reading Barbara Sher's Wishcraft, Julia Cameron's The Artist Way, and I would create these success teams, as Barbara Sher calls them. I also spent 6 years as a professional stand-up comic coming out of the ashram. And I met my husband doing that. We were the king and queen of Pennsylvania. He's also a comedian. And these success teams were popping. My best friend was in one, and she was an elementary school teacher. She ended up opening a bookstore on Lexington Avenue. Another friend of mine who was in it became a DJ. And my husband said, you're good at this. You should charge. And I was really tired of restaurant hostessing and waitering and cleaning other people's houses. But I didn't know what I was doing. And I found out it was this new industry called coaching. So I put a shingle out. I got some training. And fast forward many years, I got clear that the people I loved to work with were people like me. People who were creative, who had an entrepreneurial spirit, and often felt pulled in 50 directions. In other words, creative entrepreneurs with ADHD.
I was about to say. So in other words, me.
Baby.
Because
that
I was going to turn into a therapy session.
Yeah, no, that was one of the things, Lorianne. Like I told you, I'm really looking forward to you kind of taking lead on this particular one, because the truth is I was like, ooh, as we were talking, I was like, I wonder how many tips Rahti's gonna have for me, because we get on and within the first 5 minutes, I'm doing 3 or 4 different things already, and getting into it. So no, being in a creative space, unless you're there, a lot of folks don't understand just how difficult it can be within a focus aspect, right? Getting focused and being able to really make it work. You're going to be successful or you're not. And I think one of the biggest things for those of us in that space is we have to recognize where our weaknesses are. And I've come to a position very, very quickly when we started MW Partners, was that I had a weakness in the organization. I could not stay focused on this. So we hired team members to help keep projects organized and on focus and on point, because I'm jumping all over the place. There's really just no way around that, because I'm not a pharmaceutical guy. I'm not going to get on drugs. I'm just going to deal with it.
I'm just still stuck on you're either successful or you're not.
I think when it's for a creative personality, from what I've seen, you can get stuck on the negative creativity. or positive creativity. It's just, I've seen them,
Oh, okay.
artists,
I get it.
right?
It's
I
where
mean,
you
you
put
name
your
it.
focus. You can
That's
focus
it.
on what's going
That's
well.
it. That's
And
it.
oh,
That's it.
gotcha.
Yeah.
It's not like Meryl Streep or bust. That's not what you mean.
No, not like that. It's just, you know what, like when you have that artist heart, when you have that creativity out there. How many musicians? I mean, we have musicians in my family. We have artists in my family. We have all of those creativity type personalities. And what I've noticed is we tend to find others like us, and there's a lot of us that are unemployed and never really get to a certain point, and they either need to get a real job or they just can't get past their own obstacles in the way. And I see that a lot, especially with creative type personalities. So, but what about you?
Oh, absolutely. And like you, my attention is split just now because I have a geriatric age. I'm sorry to leave camera, but this guy, he's my supervisor. This is Pookie, and sometimes he starts vocalizing, and he wants to make sure that I'm on point. And he is actually, he has Alzheimer's, and they get all the things humans do, and he's paralyzed in his back legs. So I can't have him away, and I'm alone here. So anyways, Pookie, I don't even remember the question Rigoberto was asking me. Do you? I'm sorry.
No, Lorianne, go ahead, take it
I
away.
apologize. I'm so sorry.
Well,
No,
I got
you're
my
good.
own questions. Let's just get started with the
Now I'm
creativity.
back and I'm fully here. Now that I have my
Okay.
familiar.
Let's just talk about this creativity and
Yeah.
how people like Rigo, like ADHD, like how do they get all this creativity, like DNA?
That's a good question.
That's kind of where I want to get started, because I myself attract these kind of people. I don't think I don't think I have ADHD at all, but I think that I attract those type of people to me.
Well, that's a really interesting. I think that's because we're coaches in part,
Mm-hmm.
and I think people may know or understand, even if they don't know what coaching is, that one of the things that we do is bear witness to
Mm-hmm.
their crazy thought process, so that they can hear and see themselves, and then sort their stuff out. So, that's why I think, that might be part of why we end up attracting a lot of the same folks. You're going to hack and wheeze. Just don't die or have a seizure. I'm putting you down. I'm sorry. As far as the DNA, yeah. My
Richie, I
father-
almost want to see you and your husband's show, because we're only like 13 minutes into this, and I'm doing a lot of laughing.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you. And it's so much more fun making people laugh like this than from a stand-up stage. Let me tell you, because it's a dare. When you're on a stand-up stage, this was my experience of it anyway. It was like, okay, prove it. Are you funny? And there's nothing that puts the kibosh on being funny than that. So I mean, it was a really rough profession. I mean, I was either on cloud nine, I'm the next Joan Rivers, or crying on the floor of some disgusting bathroom in Virginia because some guy had heckled me to show my tits, and why do I have such a big nose? Some anti-Semitic weird thing. So, it's not an easy. That's not an easy gig if you tend to absorb people's crazy.
Yeah.
Which is also why I love coaching. We cannot absorb people's crazy. We cannot. We don't have that luxury. Anyways, my dad played the mandolin in the army. I had a cantor, a relative who was a cantor in Russia, in Berdichev. I got great grandparent or something. So yeah, it is in the DNA a little bit. I think a lot of things are.
It's got to be, because I'm listening to your history. You just describing, like your family, your father, your grandparents, and I'm thinking, wow, I have a very boring childhood compared to everything that you've just shared. And I'm sure that it's really
boring,
only like the tip of the
or
iceberg.
maybe healthy, maybe nurturing.
Well, that's a whole different conversation, whether or not like it was healthy, or because Well, let's just get back to all this creativity. I mean,
Okay.
it just sounds to me like you've done so many different things.
Mhm.
Is it because you get bored easily, or is it like that, like what they say with ADHD, like, oh, or is it that shiny object syndrome?
You know what it is, and I think this is true for a lot of my clients. Not bragging, but I'm good at a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Good, and I try it on for size, and I go, "Wow, I've got some innate talent. I should do that for a living." And like I played the violin very well, and so my mother thought, she thought it had to be my life. Or I would make these little, when I coach, I sometimes sculpt. Because that's a way for me to stay grounded. And I use baby Bonbell wax, from the baby Bonbell cheese. And so I
Hmm.
make these little things. And so my mother thought I should sell my sculptures. And this is a problem. If you treat a kid like everything they're good at should define them, I think you're setting them up. It's a lot of pressure to put on a kid.
That's a really good point.
Uh,
That's a
That's a
that's
that's a that's
really
a
interesting.
that's a really good point. I can
Can
tell
we
you
just
from experience, I screwed that one up.
hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
you,
no,
you know, he seems your kid, Donnie, is awesome. The fact that you guys can work together, I mean, that's amazing. That's incredible. You
So
know,
when you started working with business owners
yeah,
and you started getting deeper into that because you found yourself in that place where you were doing what you loved, right? So
yeah.
you went through a couple different levels of profession, and it's funny because we really do help individuals when we have gone through that process ourselves,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I
And so
agree.
you're
Yeah.
saying that you're starting to find you were that personality, you were in a creative space, and what you started to realize was the same challenges that you had gone through in your career, in your life, you were finding ways to help others solve that problem. So, you know, how did you start to address that? How did you get out there and say, "Hey, by the way, you're a professional in your role, in your position. How would you like to admit that you have, a disorder? How would you like to admit that you're not functioning properly and you may not be the right person for the job?" And the reason why I tell you that is because some years back, I remember in one of my own corporate roles, because if you know me, you already know that I'm ADHD. Like, whoa, shocker, right? And as well, a lot of times when you struggle with that, one of the wonderful things that comes with it is the side effect of dyslexia, right? And so you
Yeah.
always have a couple other aspects. And I remember having a boss even tell me, like, you shouldn't, like, don't tell people that. And I was like, why?
Uh-huh.
Like, I can't spell for shit. And if you pay attention, it's going to take you about 5 minutes to realize, oh, like, he's got dyslexia as well. Like, I don't pretend to. In fact, I want to expose those weaknesses right away. And
Mm-hmm.
and in my life, I've learned how to take those and capture them the best I can as strengths, not as weaknesses. But so many companies and old school management techniques is don't show people your weaknesses,
Well, that's
right?
probably why I don't work it with corporate. I mean, corporate environments. I don't know. I think also, Rigoberto, that may be changing. I think that may be changing. And I'm not a legal scholar, but I do know that there are now laws that dictate that employers have to make certain workplace accommodations for people. Right? And ADHD, I mean, you may not want to reveal it in your first or second interview, but it is considered a disability. Even though I call it it's a superpower, really.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the way I feel. But my
yeah.
my my question really is how do you get leaders in those positions
Mm,
to expose it, to stand out and say, hey, this is a weakness? Because again, like for myself and my own personality, it never bothered me to expose that.
yeah.
But I can see how my personality really doesn't care. In fact, it should probably be a little bit more careful on what I
Yeah.
say. But the truth is that I'm not a really good liar. And so I just say what I'm thinking.
It's a lot of
Pros and
pressure to
cons,
lie.
right? Yeah,
Ugh.
there's
Oh,
pros and cons to that, but the thing is that a lot of individuals aren't like that. They're not like that. So how do you help them get past that? Because I would assume, you know, this aspect of at least admitting that there's a need for that type of a coach. I don't know very many adults that go out in a corporate setting that say, "Okay, I have a need for an ADHD coach." I mean,
Yeah, I do
I'm
know
really
there is
curious on
some.
that.
One of person I worked with, Jerry Wistrom. He was a coach mentor of mine and a wonderful guy, very smart guy. And he used to. I'm jealous of him because he was able to do it. He went into corporations and got hired specifically as an ADHD coach to help people improve their performances. Um, and he was interested in doing that. I wasn't. I'm not particularly interested in that, but I think it is starting to happen. Um, I as far as getting higher ups to view it as I mean, are they out of the closet with their own shtick is the question, you know? I mean, I think Steve Jobs is ADHD or diagnosed with ADHD. I don't know. Was he out of the closet with it? I don't know.
Maybe he just embraced, like he just
Yeah,
embraced it. Like, who cares that, it's,
right.
I think it's weird that it's considered a disability,
I do
but
too.
this conversation sort of reminds me of, you know, yay many years ago, when executive coaching came out, you got an executive coach because you were a problem, that you weren't doing something right. So it wasn't a
Yeah,
good thing that you had a coach. Whereas
right.
now it's like you're doing something so wonderful and you're so valuable to the company that we want to help you even more. I mean, I was an
Yeah,
executive coach. This is what I did.
yeah,
But
yeah.
and I also have clients who are specifically, they work with neurodivergent people, and
Hmm.
they go into companies, and because there are so many benefits to this ADHD, for example, that
Yes, if
corporations
it's
just need to tap
understood.
into.
Exactly. Exactly. If corporations can recognize what someone is good at, the trouble is I read these job descriptions nowadays. I don't know if you do, but sometimes it's like, they ask for the moon. I want someone who can do accounting, but also be a mediator, and also can do tech and redesign computers. And job descriptions are insane. So I will often coach people to say, what is the title? What is the job title? If it is copy editor and you're really good at that, don't worry about all the other crazy they're asking for, right?
Right, right.
Uh, Bring their attention to what it is you're good at and what they're actually asking for, and how you will solve their problem doing that.
And
And then
isn't
if,
that the whole
yeah,
point of like an interview? It's like you go into the interview, and
yeah,
that's what you should be doing. You should be like selling. Here, like, here are my talents, here are my
that's right.
skills, here's what
You
I
don't go and
bring
say,
to
listen, you don't start with the negative. I don't know how to do booking. You don't start with that. You focus on exactly, Laurie, what your strengths are. This is what I'm really good. This is how I'm going to solve your problem. Right.
the.
Yeah.
We should be hiring people to solve problems, not cause problems.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think people are thinking that they're doing that. I think they think they're hiring people to solve problems. However, then I wonder if they don't impose their own expectations on these people. And, it's interesting because I don't know, you've probably heard of this, Lori, because it's so ubiquitous now. It is the big fad of the coaching industry, and I got sucked right in, and it's actually fantastic. Um, and I agree, Sean. You don't bring listener. You don't bring ADHD up out of the blue. That's why I said earlier. You don't necessarily announce in your first interview or
Mhm.
whatever. Um, what was I gonna say? Shrapnel! Oh, brain shrapnel! I said this
This
is
is what
why
happens.
I don't look at the chat while I'm talking.
Yeah.
'Cause
So
but
don't look at
what
the
was I
chat.
saying?
We'll bring it up. We'll bring the
Okay,
questions in. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There
okay.
you
I
go.
was saying
Don't let
something
it.
important.
Don't
I
let it
remember.
get you.
It'll come back to
Oh
you.
yeah.
Yeah,
Say
what?
that again, Lori.
I said it's going to come back to you, but you
It's gonna
just came
come
back to you.
back
Go
to
ahead.
me. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's easy. This ubiquitous thing called positive intelligence. You've probably heard of it. Shirzad
Yes.
Shamin, Positive Intelligence. He wrote this book, and this guy, I think he has really created a wonderful methodology where he is going into corporations and he is getting leaders to objectively look at themselves by understanding their own demons and their own ways of self-sabotage. That's what I love about the positive intelligence methodology. You take an assessment, and the idea is it identifies the ways in which you sabotage yourself. If I had
Mhm.
thought of it, I could bring up my own results. But for instance, my top three when I first took the assessment were hyperachiever, controller, and pleaser. Okay.
Ooh.
Sometimes, yeah, right.
Yeah,
And
like that
sometimes,
the controller and pleaser is a very interesting combination when you think
oh,
about it.
isn't
Yeah.
it? It
It's like you want to
is.
control the situation, but make sure everybody's happy.
Oh, yeah. Great. And
Mhm.
believe me, there are leaders who struggle with that, and they go into a meeting and they wonder why nobody ever comes up with any good ideas. Because every time somebody makes a suggestion, the control freak comes in and negates it in some way and tries to manage the idea, and so they create it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Leaders, if they're not aware of their saboteurs, as they're called in this methodology, will actually create the non-results that they think they're getting from employees. So I think this positive intelligence work is a real boon to business all over the world right now.
So,
Um,
so do you want to get a little deeper into that positive
sure,
intelligence? Yeah, help me
positive
understand that.
intelligence. Yeah. Um, well, it comes out of this whole psychological movement of, positive psychology, right? And it's there's been a lot of research, a lot of neuroscience invested in this, and the findings have to do, and this is why I love it for ADHD. People get hijacked, and ADHD is a challenge of executive functioning, which is has to do with the prefrontal cortex, the more evolved parts of the brain. So when people get hijacked by their lizard brain, the ancient part of the brain, and that's where the saboteurs live, the controller lives, the pleaser lives, then all the worst decisions are made. However, we're convinced that those saboteurs are helping us, right? And so there are these little techniques, little mini meditations that we're trained in as PQ coaches. I'm a PQ coach, right? I use the methodology where people can quiet their system. All right. Can I lead us through one little one? Is it okay?
Yeah, no, go
Yeah,
right
All right.
do
So
ahead.
it.
put two fingers together, everybody, and follow along at home, folks. Put two fingers together. You can close your eyes. All right. And at first, just notice that you are breathing. Notice your breathing. Pay attention to your breath. And now, rub two fingers together and pay such close attention to that you can feel your fingertip ridges. Notice your fingertip ridges. Have you ever really felt them before? Really pay, as Shirzad would say, exquisite attention to that physical experience of touch. Okay. Now, you may notice you feel a little calmer. What we've done is we've quieted down the limbic system a little so that we now have access to, in this methodology, what is called the sage muscles, the prefrontal cortex, the right brain. And that's where we just know. That is a place of knowing the answers to things. The place of figuring things out and trying to game reality in advance, those are your saboteurs.
So was it
So
okay? Like in 5 seconds in that exercise, I couldn't keep my eyes closed. Like
it's okay, absolutely.
I was like, all right, I got it. I can feel
I'm
it.
done.
Yeah, I'm done. Like I'm
Check.
done.
I get it. I get it. You noticed that though, didn't you?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
That's where you start
Meditation's
there.
become an absolute necessity for me
Absolutely.
in my daily activities, meditation, journaling, and different aspects of accountability to help me process thoughts. This show right here and everything you're seeing was a part of my own process of what a coach had called creative constipation.
Well, it
Yeah.
sounds like it's the opposite of constipation. You're exploding.
Well,
Uh,
that was
you know, to
exactly it.
stick
It
with
was
the
he
Polish
had
analogy.
recognized for myself as a creative personality, stepping back into a business running, personality.
Yeah.
What happened was I started to become very stressed out because I was now running a business. I'm running a business. I'm doing books and sitting with bookkeepers and CPAs, and I'm creating aspects for sales, and I'm doing operational elements to it, and I'm not being creative. And so it was absolutely impacting me. It was impacting my health. It was impacting.
Impacting.
Oh, it was huge. I had never had breakdowns like that ever. I mean, I had straight nervous breakdowns where I was done for
Oh,
2 days,
So what
where I
changed?
couldn't.
What shifted for you?
Well, what
What
shifted
shifted for
was
you?
was
Yeah.
recognizing that I needed to have an outlet for my creativity. I've always been in sales and marketing or been in operations where I was working either with my hands from a technical perspective, so I was constantly solving problems,
Yeah.
or I was in a sales and marketing role or some sort of strategic role where I'm coming up with strategy and dealing with it. So all of these are always keeping my brain moving, right? And so it was easy to stay busy and find things to get done. When we recognized that, I thought it was funny, and there we go. We started doing live podcasts, and then I realized just how much it wasn't just opening creativity, but it was
And Lori
actually
became the
starting to
guest who
find.
never left, I
Well,
understand.
Yeah,
here's what's
yeah, yeah.
so here's what's interesting. I mean, Rigo, if you had that creativity constipation, as you're calling it, I actually would call mine creativity anorexic, because that's what and I've shared this with you off the show. I like needed to have like good conversations with people,
Yeah.
and different people. Like I
Yeah.
want to expand my mind, because I felt like, especially because of the past couple of years, that my world and my box, as I was calling it, was like getting smaller and smaller, and it was just
Yeah,
getting
I think a
boring.
lot of people were definitely dealing with that, right? And so it's opened up the ability for us to connect with so many others now because of everything that's happened with the pandemic and COVID and everything else. It just gave us the tools faster. I think it was coming anyways. I believe that we're hitting an aspect of a digital revolution, and then I think we're getting ready to phase into another one in the next 5 or 7 years. But if you look at all the different big changes that's happened to industry, you've seen different levels of growth, and I believe that we were already headed there. I just think the pandemic just sped it up. I mean,
I think you're
you
right.
look
Yeah,
at
man.
It just
you look at
Yeah, I
accelerated.
think
Zoom went from 10 million subscribers to over 300 million in 30 days.
Yeah,
There's a lot to
it's
be
so
said about their
interesting.
preparation, but I mean, that's a huge growth, Go ahead.
I love the upside of the pandemic for me was that I was already working like this, and so I didn't miss a beat. And also I think what else? Well, what I'm hearing you say too is, and Lori too, in ADHD we look at people's processing styles, and I think you're both verbal processors. You've got to think out loud, right? Whether you're writing or whatever, you need to get
Mhm.
the words out
Yeah, our
in order to
whiteboards. Yeah,
access.
whiteboards
Yeah,
are a necessity for me. It's hilarious, and I love digital mediums, but I have to have whiteboards. I do.
yeah.
Like
You're
I
the
have to.
second
I have
person I
to.
heard
I have
say
to.
that today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have to process physically, and it's
I'm
not even. And
visual.
it doesn't even make any sense. They're like sticks and circles and
yeah.
half words and half letters, but it just my hand has to do it, or I doodle. I have
It's
to not.
kinesthetic. You're
Yeah,
kinesthetic.
yeah,
You
no,
got
and
to hear
funny
it. You
enough,
got to. Yeah.
that's it.
I
Yeah,
spoke
that's
at
it.
this marketing office, and at the end of it, we were talking about his office, and he said every surface in here, every wall, every desk is a whiteboard. And I was like, oh my
I
God, I
love
could
it.
have, this is a playground for me. I wanted
Oh
to have more talks there.
man. And I got to tell you, it's so funny because my mother could have killed me because I used to write all over the walls when I was a little kid.
Little did you
And
know
when
you were onto
and I mean,
something.
I remember I felt so bad once. I had a, back then I'm a boomer, so the teachers could be really sadistic and awful. And I, in red crayon, if you got 100, then you were a good girl, right? So I covered the walls of my room in 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%. I mean, kind of like psycho, you know. However, getting back to that idea of the prefrontal cortex and the sage brain not being, not just having knowing, you get that through kinesthetic moments. You get that through noticing your breath. You get that through walking and moving. And so that's why I think it's so great in education. They're starting to realize kids need to get up and walk in the back of the room. They need to allow kids to chew gum during tests, right? Before it was like, no wonder you think the
Hmm.
kid is dumb. You're not allowing the kid to think in
Or to
accordance
be who
with
they
their
are.
biology or be who they
Yeah.
are,
Hmm.
you know. So yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. And also decision making, which is what a lot of people come to me for. And planting a seed here, because I want to gift something to your listeners. But decision making, if we get caught up in our head around a decision, that's the worst way to make it. You gotta get it out. Either talk it out with someone, write it out, whatever, and take the onus off the preciousness of making a decision. All right, and just I think there's a whole thing too with this. If you're explosive, right? Um, I had to give up fear of making mistakes a long time ago.
Rati, can I just ask you a question about that
Yeah,
decision making? Because
yeah.
I feel like,
I'm glad you're asking it because I'm like, all right, we got to dig into this one.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
So I mean, it's great to say, like, get it out, write it on paper, like, talk to
Yeah.
people. But don't you think, like, we're actually trained to think about this, sleep on it,
Oh, yeah.
almost
I
like
think
keep
there's a
it to
lot of value in that.
ourselves?
Oh, keep it to ourselves like a secret? I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, I just feel like, like we are taught. I mean, I'm like thinking about
Mm.
my upbringing, but it's just like you're not taught to share this stuff with other people so that you can actually work it out. It's like, just let
Hmm.
me know what your decision is. And then we sit there and it's just like, well, here's like when you're trying to make
Do
a
you think,
decision,
given your
you've only
history,
got
that's how that's been? I'm just curious. Now I'm digging into your history
now
a
you're
little
digging
bit.
into
Why?
mine.
Why do you believe that that's how we as a whole are taught?
Well, yeah, I do see that with people. But I think, like, looking back at like my upbringing, my dad was an engineer, so
Yeah.
brilliant man, did very few words, So I think there was that, like, you just had
Okay.
to know what the answer is.
That's the modeling.
Hmm.
That was the modeling you got. Whereas for me, it was like no, Diana Rigg, the late great Diana Rigg, wrote a book called No Turn Unstoned. No turn unstoned. I mean, the fear of making a mistake. This is also probably cultural, but a Jewish mother, when you're going to school, doesn't say goodbye, have a great day. She says, be careful. Okay. So, don't do that. Oh, what if you did that? My mother was the biggest coulda, shoulda, woulda person. Always, don't do that because this might happen. Don't do. So for me, I had to learn that a decision is just a choice that gives the universe more information. That's all it is. And I did not make that up. I got that from a coach I work with, Monica Shaw of Revenue Breakthrough, but it's absolutely true. That's all it is. And existentially speaking, there's no right or wrong. Just
So
make a
true.
decision and decide it's right, because what's going to
And
happen is you'll
and
get
it's from
feedback.
there, yeah, we get
Yeah,
feedback, and like, we get to remake decisions because now
that's
we have
right.
more information. But this is
That's
this
right.
is really interesting. So how do you help your clients, whether your individual clients or your business clients, actually make better decisions for themselves?
Well, I help them get in touch with, offhand, I would say, what matters, what really matters most to them.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a matter of realigning with their values, you
Hmm.
know, uh, not their shoulds.
Figuring out what
Sometimes
their values are.
figuring out what their values are. That's the classic coaching exercise. Write down your 5 top values, right?
Hmm.
And
One of the things I've seen, Rati, and
yeah,
I think you probably experience this as well, but I think a lot of times there individuals have a difficult time identifying uh, their skill sets,
hmm
their ability to learn, and at any level, and a reality that not everybody can do everything or anything. And I think I like the example of looking at it from a sports analogy.
hmm
If I had an intention, and I was actually speaking to my wife about this morning, and if I had an intention my entire life to become a professional NBA basketball player, great,
yeah, yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
As a child, that's a dream, and I'm looking at this and I'm having fun playing basketball. Well, by the time I'm 5 years old, it would become very obvious that I'm not going to get much taller. As I'm getting older and older, and my genetics and my Hispanic background and everything else, we're not tall people. And so to get into that 5'10" or 5'11", and even if you're lucky enough to get to 6 foot, most of my family is within the 5'7" to 5'11" space. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how much I want to become a professional basketball player. I have a lot of things going against me. And
hmm
using my skill sets, my born attributes, the things that I have as strengths, and making that be what I build an income from versus trying to create a career from skill sets we don't have. That's just one of the things I have found. I remember I got in one organization and we had a gentleman in a sales role who is a engineer. And I said,
Yeah.
"Why are you in sales?" And he sucked at sales. He was not very good. And the
Yeah.
organization actually wanted me to remove him from the company. It was like one of my first objectives. Hey, you're going to come in, you're going to fire these people. And I sat down with him and I asked him, "What do you want to do?" He's like, "I'm an engineer. I want to get into the technical aspect." And I said, "Okay, let's move you there. Let's look at technical sales. Why don't we put you in a position where there's no pressure and you can just get out there and help solve problems and explain the technical aspect of this product to the client, to the prospect." What did he do
So
that
I'm
year? He
curious
went.
to know how this relates to the NFL player and you not becoming an
I'm
NFL
about to,
player.
yeah, about to tell you what he did was that
Yeah.
year he ended up selling millions of dollars of product and inventory
How do you like that? Yeah.
because he was in a role that was better suited for his personality type.
That's
And
right.
my question to you is there's a lot of folks out there that I think fail to recognize that they need to know who they are before they try to build this whole massive career. This is one of the things that I've worked on with my children quite a bit. It's like, look, before you get out there and decide what you want to be, you need to go figure out what you're not. All
I'm
right?
curious to know, Rigoberto. Uh, I don't think it's an accident when we crave things. I wanted to be an actress before I knew about, when I was 4, I wanted to be an actress. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. You don't wake up in your crib going, I'm going to be a coach, you know, but there's a seed in there. There are a lot of transferable skills
Mm-hmm.
from theater and acting to being a
Mm-hmm.
coach, right? You have to listen to people. You have to really enjoy helping them create a narrative. You
Yep.
have to also get them to reframe that narrative,
You got to
right?
tell a story.
And tell stories. You have to be able to communicate pithily and well. So why do you think you wanted to be the NFL player? I'm
Oh
imagining
no, I
what
didn't.
in
I was
you,
using
who
that. I
in
was
you
using that as
is
an
it?
example.
Was there,
Yeah,
but
no.
yeah, but there's something there. Who is the NFL player in you?
Yeah, no, that was just an example. I never wanted. to be a
But it
professional.
brings up a really
Yeah.
good point. What he was talking about, Rati, is that, and I found this from my days, in corporate, is that we
Yeah.
hire resumes. We
Oh,
hire resumes instead
yeah.
of really looking at like the person and are they a good fit. We hire resumes and fire personalities. And just like
Yeah,
Rika
that's
was
right.
saying, I mean, I've seen that a lot. Like the qualities of this person, they're in the wrong role.
Yeah.
But somebody,
What I
like,
love
oh,
is
we
the
Well, the
need to
thing is
fill
that
conclusion
this
was he
nobody
couldn't
helped them
sell.
understand that, right? Sorry.
What
Go
I
ahead.
love is the conclusion made was that he couldn't sell, which was bullshit.
Yeah.
It was that he
Well,
was
he
sorry.
not
probably
allowed to
wasn't
sell
good.
from his genius, from what he
Well,
was
No,
he
it's
doing.
probably
it's.
wasn't
Go
good
ahead,
at on the
Lorianne.
road. He probably wasn't good at on the road stuff.
No,
If he was very clear.
actually, he became one of the most traveled individuals in the organization and did more than anybody else. Here's what it came down to:
Yeah.
I see this a lot in leadership, and I think it goes even further back. We had generations where individuals like you and I would go into a company, specifically, I think a lot with men, 60s, 70s time frame, where you would get into an organization and you would enter into mentorship programs, right? So you'd get into mentorship programs. You had knowledge that was being transferred from the folks before you. There was plenty of individuals that would rally around you. So look at a journeyman, for instance, and they would take the entry level folks and they would work them through the process of becoming a journeyman or getting their journeyman's license. It was an apprenticeship program. And so
Right.
people went through the process. They learned where not to step. They learned how to cut this particular corner here or there and save themselves a few hours by the end of the week and then save hours and days by the end of the month, right? You learn
Yes.
these things from mentorship, from coaching, from those who have learned the process already. As we've gotten further and further into a technical age,
Yeah.
is many wonderful attributes and I think massive advantages that we're getting from innovation of technology. We have lost a lot of mentorship and leadership
Yeah.
and a lot of
Right.
passing down of tribal knowledge to the next individual. Also, there are very few careers where people will actually stay for more than 5 years.
And that's what
And
results
so,
in hiring resumes instead of people.
but that's exactly
I
right. That also results in
Yeah,
putting people in the wrong roles because
exactly.
we're not learning how to understand people.
That's right.
We're just looking for a bottom line, or we're looking to solve a problem or go do this or go do that. I mean, by all means, well, I've done this plenty of times. Well, I'm going to hire you based on this, but I'm going to wait a couple months and find out if you're the right fit. Not for the organization, for the role, because I like you. That's why I hired you. And if
That's
you're willing
right.
to do something else that I think is going to help you become more successful for your own life, and that
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate myself in my life. I've been fortunate enough to help others, but that was because I struggled with a lot of that myself, and I stopped trying to do things that were never going to suit me. I mean, I got an electrical engineering degree because I thought I wanted to be an engineer. I
Mm.
can't sit still long enough. I love the technical aspect. I could read schematics all day long. I love that because it keeps my brain going. I
Yeah, yeah.
cannot sit down in that cubicle. And I realized I will never be an engineer. I have the degree, but what can I do? I tried construction, I tried electrical. And then before you know it, I started getting into sales and business development and marketing
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
coaching and teaching and running crews. Ta-da, there it was. Now I was filled with fulfillment because I was learning and growing and getting engaged. That's where I needed to be. But
Yes.
do you see what I'm saying? But if
I
we
think
were,
it gave
if
you a lot of
yeah,
empathy to have all of your challenges. Rigoberto just prepared you with so much empathy that you can, it's easier to see people. I think when we've walked in their shoes, right?
Mhm.
Um, I don't fire people quickly. I know a lot of people, and that some people say that's just don't get. I don't fire people quickly. I do what you do. I hone in on the strength. Maybe you are in the wrong role, and I
mhm,
will move things over to someone else. I was a personal assistant to an actress for 30 years as a young woman, and she had her staff. It's funny because she was just a journeyman actress. You've never heard of her, but she had a staff, and so they were young women. She called her cabbage patchers, young actresses, and many of us. And I was Rose Red, and she had somebody else she called Rose White, and there was somebody else. But anyways, Rose Red here was great at making the salad dressing, but she would never have her do her books. Rose White was a powerhouse when it came to balancing the checkbook, and she found that out through trial and error. You know, and she was a great lady. Great lady. I have a Facebook page dedicated to her. Anna Minot Warren Facebook page. Go check her out. Yeah, isn't it? But she was, and I think women, maybe mentorships formerly were more of a guy thing. I think as women, there's actually a book written on this. We mentor each other.
Mm-hmm. It comes in your DNA. I mean, it's like who you are. I mean,
we're just natural nurturers.
Absolutely.
And we find our bona fide mothers, right? This lady Anna, she was my other mother. She was able to give me things that my own mother of biological mother just couldn't. And I don't know. I'm curious, Lori. Did you have relationships like that coming up? Were there any women who, for you, were, they were mentors to you and
were mentors to me? Actually, I would say there are certain men in my past, who were really, really good friends of mine. Who I would say like they were mentors of mine versus really finding women. I come from healthcare and the corporate side of healthcare, and I think it was, in healthcare they say nurses eat their young. They've got that sort of a phrase, unfortunately. Nurses eat their young.
Wow.
I have a question for you, because we're talking about these creatives, ADHD. I'm curious about because sometimes you can butt heads with your fellow employees. Do you have tips that can help the people that are not the creative type, that are on the outskirts, so that they don't get frustrated and angry?
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
You got any tips?
Well, big one for me. Yeah, big one for me, and I learned this phrase from a gentleman who is currently my client manager, and that is, and I learned to do this with him, because at first I was like, oh no, this hire was not, but then I learned you have to do perception checks. You have to, it's not asking people to parrot you, but you have to be, I do this at the end of every meeting. I will say, now just to recap, just to make sure I have communicated effectively, can you tell me what it is you are, what are your actions going forward? What are your assignments and what are the deadlines for those? And I will sit and listen. And many times it's like playing telephone, right? By the time it goes around the table, it's something else entirely.
Yep.
You got to do those perception checks. And I don't know that this is for everyone. Something I've started doing that really works, and it's for me too, is I will start every meeting out with just a moment of centering. Just everybody chill. Everybody calm down. Get out of the I've got to be perfect. I've got to impress. Because that gets in the way of listening. So
there's so much science behind that. 2 minutes. That's all it takes. 2 minutes. The amount of space it opens up for your mind. We've done that a couple times. There's a few times. Anita, one of our employees, she's my executive manager. Basically, she manages this, and sometimes she's like, "Do we need to take a minute to meditate, Rico? Do we need you?"
I love it.
You're lucky you have her. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, but we'll do it tomorrow. We gotta go. We'll do it tomorrow.
That is awesome.
We got stuff to check off.
Yeah, we got stuff to do. But yes, do I need to? Yes, absolutely. Am I going to do it? Probably should.
No. But Rigo, what you like the whole perception thing. Rigo sort of reminds me of when we had Luke on the show, and he was talking about always debriefing.
That's right.
constantly
Yes,
like
that's right.
debriefing over whether
Having to,
it was
yeah.
a good a project that went really well, a project that had some faults to it, but it's always the debrief where I
Yes.
think we all learn not just about the project, but we learn about ourselves
Yep.
and how to work together. I think more effectively also.
Well, and that's the thing is I had a what was his name, Rick. I remember he said, you cannot perceive the level of understanding of anyone else in the room.
That's
And
right.
this was in a role where if you did, you could get yourself killed or someone else killed because it was high voltage. And so, the mistake is you think that everybody in the room has had the same training or same understanding. And we forget that sometimes in something simple like a team meeting. And you're right, it's something even I find myself forgetting, but it is critical because we are going to have this conversation and each of us are going to walk away with a different aspect based on so many different variables on what we think it is. So did we set the precedence? Do you
Yeah.
and I and, Rahti have the same level of capacity? This is a whole nother conversation we'll have to get into another
Yeah.
day, but I love
I
it
love
because the idea is, do we have the same capacity factor to even understand it? It doesn't mean that one is less than the other, because Lorianne's experience may not have been the same as yours and mine not as Lorianne's, and we're at our max capacity, yet neither of us are reaching the goal that someone has set for us because that person's capacity to understand the directions and instructions are way different. So here we are, we're not doing this and we're not hitting goals and we're not hitting objectives, and we have all this environment that doesn't seem like a cohesive place to be. And in fact, we never just said, hey, by the way, is red to you like it is to me?
Yeah,
or is it,
man.
You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, should we run these little simple checks by her first real quick? What color is this? But we don't. We just make the assumption and we move forward, and then we wonder why that individual is not
It
doing
reminds
good
me
in
of
their,
that
in their
great
place.
scene from, A Little Miss Sunshine. I don't know if you watched the movie.
been a while.
Oh,
It's
it's
been
a
a while.
spoiler. Maybe I
Yeah,
shouldn't.
it's
It's
been
a
a while.
spoiler.
Yeah, you're gonna ruin
It
it.
was about what the son his uncle asks him a question about the color of something, and the son has taken a vow of silence for a year to become some kind of an air pilot in the armed forces. He wants to become some kind of a flyer, and he's kept this. He's decided on a year of silence. He wants this, and what happens is the uncle asks him to point to a color for some reason. I don't remember why. Turns out he's colorblind, which means
He'll never be a pilot.
he can't be a pilot. And the
Mhm.
kid explodes. Explodes. However, the kid was going around with this assumption about how he sees color. And everybody else was assuming he saw color in a certain way. I think just once he knows, we don't see the next movie, but the kid knows the kid is going to evolve, however he evolves, with that knowledge. And when you find things out, I think when you work with people about their origins or their differences in perception, then yeah, we can work together. But meanwhile, there's this saboteur contagion that goes on. This is also out of positive intelligence. Our saboteurs, like I mentioned earlier in the conversation, the controller, the pleaser, whatever, they get triggered if we don't get calm and cool. They get triggered by other people's saboteurs. So if somebody's a pleaser and they're smiling and nodding, meanwhile they have no fucking clue of what you're talking about. But meanwhile, you're a controller, and it's very gratifying to see somebody getting it, and then things go south. Wackiness ensues in so many instances.
Wow.
Or somebody
it's-
has a
it's sort of-
victim saboteur, and you tend to be hyper vigilant or volatile. We are triggering each other constantly. We were going to talk about trauma.
That's right.
It's almost the
I know.
end. I got to come back and talk about trauma because it's all about triggers. It's
Yep.
all about getting triggered. That's to whatever degree you have been traumatized. And we all were to some extent. People would argue with me. When you're triggered, that is a clue that something from your past is not resolved and you're being thrown into a judgmental space.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So true.
Wow, this is awesome.
This was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was great. Rahti, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It was good. And there's a lot that you can get into. You know, when you get into this particular conversation, I think, you made a comment earlier, Lorianne, on this, and I do believe that society is definitely opening up to it. We always want to make sure that we're not swinging a pendulum too far over, right? To where we're trying to enable this as a crutch. You know, we made that comment, and Sean had said something in regards to it, that, organizations making some sort of special accommodations. Like, I don't think so. Because it's real simple. You if you're not 7 foot or 6.5 foot tall, you shouldn't be playing basketball. It's the same aspect. That's what I meant by that when we were getting into it, is you have to be able to lean on your strengths, right? If you're less than 100 pounds, I highly doubt you should get into military or law enforcement. Like, there's just certain aspects that you have to recognize where you are and where you're not. And I think when we get into these subjects, like we've just talked about, we have to recognize where our emotional imbalance is, or where certain things are not and where they are. And I think instead of being more in a place where we're going to make accommodations, why don't we spend more time learning how to coach, teach, and train individuals? And who gives a shit about a resume? And I love that. Do you have references? Yeah, let me go grab a couple that hate me. Like, of course. Why would I not give you a reference that works? It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I don't want a reference.
100%. Like, we could have a whole show on.
All right, we're going to a whole thing on this. And
That
companies
is
still do
fine.
this. And they still do this. It's so
It
dumb.
does make
They
you
don't
feel
like
good,
change.
though, when you get that email about how great the person is and they get into the specifics of why.
And
they're
HR
Man,
can
I
check.
listen. I have
Because then
hired
they're
people
giving
from
you the
Ivy
personal
League schools
strengths.
and let them go, and I've gotten people that had nothing and they were the best employees. It doesn't matter. It's all about the personality. You said it, Lorianne. And that's what it gets down to. Are you willing to learn and get better? All right, listen, we got to get you filled in on this. First off, let's say thank you again very much to Rahti for being here so much. We appreciate the conversation. Thank you very, very much. I'm dropping stuff on my desk.
pleasure.
And we look forward to having an opportunity to bring you back. If you guys have not already got going on signing up with us and getting involved with the Contagious Leadership Program, please, we want you to do so by texting lunch to 316-799-8052, 316-799-8052. If you have not followed any of the panelists, or myself, Lorianne, we want to see you doing that as well. Donnie will play the simple video on how easy it is to connect with us and click the follow button. Not hard, but let me tell you what this does. It gets you connected. It allows you to see when we're posting, communicating, and talking. Also, we want to get you invited to a new community. It's our Contagious Leadership Training Community, where we're basically going to start offering a lot of what we're doing here at no cost to everybody, but we're going to put training programs together. We've already started this for the last 2 years, setting things up, and we're putting this out to the public. We want you guys to get better. We want you to be able to find your happy place, I suppose. But we can't wait to do more of this. We'll be announcing it over the next few weeks, but we have it ready. We want to know what you want to see out of it, and we want you to join this free community where you can be a part of things, start asking questions, and learn how to basically position yourself better in personal branding. So listen, thank you again, everyone, for joining. We appreciate it. We'll be back here next week. We have a full schedule, you guys. I'm not kidding. I think we're booked almost all the way up to the end of the year in December. Every single Thursday.
I'm already inviting people into January.
Okay. See. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you're right. We just had an interview on that here the other day. So yeah, we have a lot of amazing guests coming up. A lot of things going on. Please, please, please continue to be here. Same time, 1 p.m. Central every Thursday. Here, Facebook, LinkedIn. We're on LinkedIn. YouTube, Twitter. They're everywhere. Just find us, get going. We can't wait to see you here next week. Again, 1 p.m. Central for the Contagious Leadership Podcast Series. We'll talk to you later. God bless. Take care, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for having me.